Thanks a lot, Ozgur, for that interesting discussion. I think what we can do, we can just perhaps simplify it a little bit for the participants, in the sense that, ultimately what it boils down to today is that, the tug of war that is there between atheism and belief, the idea of belief itself and atheism. So from your study, is there anything that you learned that the idea of God itself can be questioned? And of course, the philosophers have a different theological tools, as you call them. I mean, one such tool is, to give importance to something without a reason. Tarji bila murajja, right? You use the term there, preponderance without a reason.
Yeah.
In one of your chapters, perhaps in the conclusion, you use that. So these kind of tools are used basically to sometimes these tools are pretty confusing. So how would you answer any critique of religion itself? It's not with Islam, who says that there is no reason to believe in God. Forget about occasionalism, where the cause is only God. I mean, what is created cannot be a cause of another cause or another effect. So basically, everything is what you call centered around God. It is theocentric in a sense. On the other hand, we have the atheists, in fact, militant atheists, like you have the author of God Delusion, who say, Dawkins, who say that there's no God, or there probably is no God, so you just can be rest assured. So how would you reconcile from your study? Is there anything that strengthens the belief, quote unquote, of a believer in God? How do you understand this question?
Yeah, that's so that's the question that I believe requires a lot of time. That's a big question. Atheism and the relationship between atheism and religion. Atheistic doctrines are usually starting from modern science, and they're using modern science to make their case, right? So I believe atheism, personally believe, is ignoring certain questions. So what I say in the last chapter of my book is the following. Now, if you look at Ash'arite occasionalist theory, Ash'arite occasionalism has certain advantages as well as certain disadvantages when it comes to reconciling religion and science, and perhaps answering certain atheistic theories or atheistic arguments. So it has, personally, I'm leaning towards more participatory accounts. I believe they are stronger. If you ask me, what I learned in this book, I can summarize it as the following. As it pertains to this discussion between religion and atheism. If you know and learn how to think about the question of existence, right? Existence as this larger framework which includes everything, right? Being. We all exist, right? And in that we participate in this existence. Science is usually looking at the relationship between beings, existing beings. Things are happening in this framework, and it kind of forgets, marginalizes, or blocks the question of existence itself. It doesn't really ask that question. Just start from the assumption that things exist, and then it continues on. I believe both atheism and science itself also, but atheistic philosophies, they seem to be not thinking enough about this question, about the question of existence. That if you will, why there's something rather than nothing, or our participation in existence, our that is the thing that I'm trying, I learned. It's a very deep and very relevant, in many ways. That's the real question. So that is what I learned in this book. I believe when we want to have a strong discussion between atheism and religion, the question of wujud, which was the central question of all Islamic philosophy and spirituality, that should be on the table, without which those discussions cannot be taking place. As if religion and science, the relationship between religion and science can be envisaged in different ways, as Ian Barber also said once, right? They can be. Look, this is what I see. Now, we have religion and science here, right? You can envisage a clash between the two, as if they cannot be reconciled. And as you mentioned already, right, people like Richard Dawkins are probably seeing their relationship as such. Religion and science are enemies, right? They cannot be reconciled at all. So that's one way of seeing their relationship. And there are people out there, they see it as such. Some people may want to have a dialogue between the two, between religion and science. There's this dialogue view. Religion and science can be in a dialogue, right? As if they are in different, compartments. So there is this, not different compartments, but they can come together and learn from each other. That's another way of seeing things, right? They can complete perhaps each other. They can learn from. There's that view too. Religion and science in dialogue. So there are a lot of people, most religious people, right? They think that's the way to go. There are also people, they defend an idea of dualism between the two, as if religion and science are in watertight compartments. Religion here, science here, they have nothing to do with each other. Let them do their own thing. There's nothing, because there's this watertight compartment between the two. They cannot really understand each other, right? Religion is speaking a different language. Science is speaking a different language. So there's no way of putting them together. And this is like a dualist view, as if there's a wall between the two. The view which defends dialogue seems, I believe, there are certain holes in that wall, and they can start speaking to each other. So I gave you three, right? Religion and science in what enemies are enemies. That's one view. Religion and science are in two watertight compartments. That is dualist view. Religion and science can be in dialogue. That's the dialogue view. That's three. All of them, in my view, has certain weaknesses. First, the first one has religion and science in clash, right? There's, it has disastrous conclusions, I guess. As if you're putting two major forces in human social, human communities into fight. Religion and science are fighting each other. That's also epistemologically not something that we want to say. If you want to say, religion and science, religion is talking about values and science is facts, right? It's epistemologically doesn't really make sense. They affect each other, and they sometimes affect each other positively. And there's that, right? Science has ethical questions. Religion has certain things to say about those. So they're not really enemies. And if you want to put them in watertight compartments, again, these two powers, they are in constant dialogue. They interpenetrate. What values you have affects the facts you see, and the facts affects the values that you will produce. So religion and science cannot really be put into two watertight compartments. They are engaging with each other all the time, right? So this dualist view doesn't really seem to be working. Enemy view doesn't really working. It's not real. Doesn't really work, right? So what is it? The other one, the dialogue view, right? So you may want to have a dialogue between the two, but the difficulty here, to be able to have a dialogue, right? One needs to have a language in which they can start talking to each other. So if your religion is using its own symbolic language and science is using its own, other language, it's really have a meaningful dialogue between the two. What I propose in this book, and what I actually agree with Ian Barber, is that we need to create a metaphysical framework, a larger metaphysical framework, in which religion and science can be located, and they can, interact with each other without losing their identities, of course, but they can interact with each other. But to be able to do that, you need to go beyond both religion and science and create this larger metaphysical framework. And I believe that can be done by starting concepts like, existence and an essence. And that, in fact, what I saw in the Islamic tradition, a construction of very profound and strong metaphysical framework in which we can place these things. Learning that language will then make a dialogue possible. But without that, dialogue is just an idea. So we need to go beyond and have this metaphysical language. And that is the job for perhaps philosophers and metaphysicians. I don't know, but I mean, that needs, that requires an attempt, a mindset which can, be inspired by science and by religion, but which can also conceptualize those inspirations and put them in dialogue, within a larger metaphysical framework. And that requires an attempt to learn and understand metaphysics. So that is what I saw in the book. And to answer your question now, Faizur Rahman, is that I believe this relationship, this discussion between atheism and religion, they seem to be mostly, in my view, the both sides of the discussion, both the religious side and the atheistic side, they seem to be missing this vital piece, which in fact can help them to understand each other better. Neither science nor modern philosophy, and nor modern religious theology seems not to be interested in this metaphysical framework, in the construction of this metaphysical framework, and without which I believe the attempts to reconcile the tension will fail. Was that helpful?
Yeah, perhaps. And in fact, you talked about a dialogue between belief and science, or religion and science. I don't know if you have read Karen Harding. She tries to indulge in such a dialogue where she talks about, in fact, she tries to reconcile the Ghazalian view with quantum mechanics or quantum physics or quantum theory itself. She says that at the microscopic level, quantum theory says that things don't exist. I mean, and because the quantum theory has a different way of understanding existence or reality. And the same thing Ghazali says in his philosophy, in Tahafut al-Philosopher, that nothing exists except God. And therefore, this cause also the occasionalist, his view, his occasionalist view says that, in fact, he justifies miracles. So having established God in that sense, which is now being agreed by a great scientist as Karen Harding, where she tries to reconcile quantum mechanics and, as I said, Ghazali's thought. Ghazali goes on to say that miracles are possible because what works on this planet are not laws, it's God's will. He gives example of a cotton and fire. If you bring cotton near fire, the law is that it should catch fire. But according to Ghazali, it is not that fire which burns the cotton, it is the command of God, which is God which makes the fire burn. So that is God's custom. And for a miracle to happen, all that God needs to do is change his custom once. So for instance, gravity pulls you down, but sometimes it can also throw things up. That is, if God changes his custom. So how do you understand that? In fact, you even discuss this in your book. You talks about where you say that general what do you call that, general divine what is the word, action, that's the word you use, right? General divine action and special divine action, that's how
Yeah.
you use it, right, in your book. General divine action refers to something which is happening every day. Gravity happens every day, nothing, no change. If I drop an object, it breaks.
Yeah.
Whereas the special divine action talks about miracles, so there again, how do you understand these things? They are too complex for a normal human being to understand these things. So how would you explain this?
So general divine action and special divine action, those are not the concepts that I offer there. I mean, they were already being used.
Yeah, of course,
And
you quote them.
they,
You quote them in your book, right? That's what I meant.
so they were, yeah, they're extensively used in the literature,
Yeah,
especially in the literature in the Western, world, with the theological departments and things like that. So that is the terms are, as you said, are referring to two different types of divine action, if you will, right? The general is just the normal flow of the world, right? And that is again because of the divine sustenance. When I am raising my hand and when I'm, say, smelling something, right? When I'm drinking water, uh, 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 you will think that this is not something miraculous, right? Everybody does that every day.
yeah,
And when it rains, you won't call it a miracle, right? Uh, but in fact, if you think deeply, nothing is possible without the divine sustenance. That's right. I mean, still you need the divine power and will, without which the world is dependent on something higher than itself. This is all religions are agreeing on, right? The world is dependent on something higher than itself, and it doesn't explain itself. It's we hence the divine presence is in the world. So from that perspective, raining can be seen as a miracle. When I smell a flower, a miracle is happening. When I drink water, especially right during fasting, right towards the end of the day, you take a sip of water and it flows down your throat and your body shivers with joy. That moment, right, when you fast, and we can call it a miracle, right? I mean, it's a miracle is happening there. Although it's an ordinary event, as we see. So from that perspective, there's nothing really ordinary. Everything is extraordinary. But there's also special divine action, as they call it. Special divine action is referring to more, right, inexplicable or more miraculous happenings in the world, such as staff turning into a serpent, right, Moses. So things like that, they're called or categorized under that category, right? I mean, the special divine action. So that was what I said in the book. But that then special divine actions, are they miracles, or are they still causal, or is God really breaking the causal chain? These are again discussions and other discussions.